Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 7-game NBA slate here for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, comment below your favorite plays. Make sure to check out the links in the description for Discord and YouTube membership, as you'll get my daily write-ups for DraftKings NBA, or actually for DraftKings and FanDuel for NBA. I will do FanDuel at the end of this video as well, so let's go and get into this one. Here's the injury report so far today. So for the Pelicans, Ingram is questionable. For the Magic, Fultz is questionable. Carter Jr. and Harris are both out. And then we're going to look at the Kings. For Sacramento, we have Fox and Lyles both out. For the Rockets, Thompson is out, the rookie. For the Nets, we're going to be looking at Cam Johnson and Claxton being out still. And then for the Nuggets, Murray is currently questionable. But he's probably going to be good to go. And then looking at the Boston Celtics, uh, uh, White is going to be out today, which is going to give a boost to Pritchard. So let's go ahead and get into our plays here. Now I'm going to look at my core plays first real quick. And Tyrese Halliburton, Peyton Pritchard, and Gordon Hayward. Now Pritchard is contingent on starting, but he's been solid in the past as a starter. So if he does draw the start, then he'll definitely be worth a look. He's not a must play, but he's definitely a core play if he draws a start. As for Halliburton and Gordon Hayward, these both guys a little bit underpriced for these matchups today, and they've both been playing well, so I think they're great options on the slate. Let's go ahead and start with our point guards here. So we'll start with Halliburton at $9,200. He's had a really solid season so far. He's had some good games. He's got a very safe floor right now, so I really like his upside. And he's in the best situation he's had all season. He's actually had tough games, and he's managed to have some good scoring outputs regardless. Then we'll look at Fred VanVleet for Houston. Now, Houston looks like a very favorable team today against Sacramento. Um, he has a low floor, but he has a high ceiling, and it's good as anybody at this position. He's had some really solid games lately. I really like his potential in this on the slate, so he's definitely worth a look here. Then we'll look at Bruce Brown at $5,400. He's played pretty well for Indiana in 3 games, and he's had 2 really bad games. So he's got a low floor and a high ceiling. He's very similar to Van Vliet in that, uh, you know, but the price is pretty good, and he isn't a must play, but he's definitely somebody that's capable in this particular matchup. Then we'll look at Clarkson for Utah. Now he's got a favorable matchup against Minnesota. Now he's had some ups and downs this season as well, but his price is still decent. His 2 bad games were in a tougher matchups against Denver and Phoenix, so I look for him to have a really big game here against Minnesota, who's not going to be too keen defensively. He has a very favorable price in this matchup. And then Peyton Pritchard, he is also a guy that if he draws a start today, he's going to have a lot of utility. He's actually played well the last couple games as well, even with the somewhat limited minutes, but he's going to have a lot of potential to have a good game here, and you're going to look for assists mostly from him, but he has some scoring ability as well, but he's higher risk from that perspective. Also consider Jalen Suggs if Fultz is out, Ben Simmons, and D'Angelo Russell at this position. Maybe in the shooting guards, we're going to start with Terry Rozier. For Charlotte. Now he's got a really good matchup here against Indiana, and he's had really solid games so far. Though he's a little bit better floor than some of the other guys at this position, but he has a high ceiling as well, so that gives him a lot of upside here. D'Angelo Russell is in play for the Lakers. Now, he has a better floor than Jordan Clarkson does, and he has some ups and downs this season, but he's a good assist rate so far, and he's playing full complement of minutes. His ceiling in this game is also very good, and so I like him here in this matchup. Jalen Green, excuse me, for Houston also in play. Now Houston's been up and down, and he had a bad game to start the season, but since then he's played pretty well, and he doesn't have a uh, super high scoring game yet, but he is still capable. He's definitely capable of that. He's been getting pretty good rebounds and assists as well, so that gives him some potential here. His price has also stayed about the same. I actually expected his price to be higher than it is, so that gives me a lot of hope that he's going to have a really solid game today. And then we'll look at Dylan Brooks for Houston. He's also in a good spot, as some of these guys at Houston is. His floor has actually been pretty steady so far this season. His 4 games, He's getting a ton of minutes, which is going to give him a lot of opportunity. I don't expect him to get 5 steals like he did last game, but he's definitely capable of some good games, and he's getting enough assists and rebounds to kind of help him pay off. But that does kind of cap his ceiling as well, so do keep that in mind. But he's a pretty solid price today. You can also consider Anthony Edwards, Suggs, and Peyton Pritchard at shooting guard. Looking at small forward, obviously Bruce Brown, Dylan Brooks can both play at small forward. And then we'll look at Kyle Anderson for Minnesota. Now, he's got some interesting potential today. Um, I do like his upside in this matchup, though he is high risk, high reward, as he's been kind of up and down so far, but his price is nice and cheap today, which gives him some upside. And Minnesota does look like they have a favorable situation here. Like I said, the floor is low here, but he definitely has some utility, and his minutes have should slowly increase as he goes. So we'll have to wait and see, but I do like his potential today. Ben Simmons also in play for Brooklyn. He's been close to double doubles and triple doubles in most games. He missed out on the double double yesterday, or in his last game against Chicago by 2 points and a rebound, and then a couple assists would have gotten him over the edge too. But he's been really solid so far. He is also playing some center minutes. His price has come up as a result of this, but he's still cheap enough that he's viable, though he is a little bit riskier at this price point. LeBron is also in play at this position for the Lakers. Obviously, his price is still under 10,000, which is good. In the games where he has to kind of put it on at the end, he's really dominating fantasy wise. And now he did have a bad game against Orlando. When I say bad game, he only had 35 fantasy points. But so that's basically his floor most games, and so I do think he's got a good ceiling though in this one, and I hope for him to like bounce back to try to dominate them this time. But his minutes are going to be limited until that fourth quarter, and then he's going to try to win the game if it's tight, and I expect this one to be kind of in that situation. We'll also look at Gordon Hayward, who can play small forward or power forward. Now, he's been very solid and has a good floor. I really like his upside in this matchup. He's just too cheap right now compared to what he's been doing to start the season. So, as long as he's playing well and he's in fast paced games like he is today, he's going to be somebody I would consider on the slate. Um, you can also consider Zach LaVine uh, at this position here. Maybe in the power forwards, we'll look at Towns. Uh, who is actually underpriced right now because his price has come down. His floor is pretty safe here at this price point, though he has had some ups and downs. He hasn't had a big 50 fantasy point game yet, but this matchup gives him a lot of potential to do so. As even though Utah can be a tougher team, I do like Minnesota today quite a bit. Then we'll look at Jabari Smith for Houston. Now he's also in a pretty good spot here, as a lot of Houston plays are a little bit underpriced, and he fits in this category. His price is about what it's been so far this season, and his floor is pretty solid, even though his first game against Orlando was kind of rough. I do look for him to have a nice potential. Excuse me. He has a lot of nice potential in this game, and he's been playing a full complement of minutes, which gives him a lot of upside. You could also consider Jason Tatum, Zion, Laurie Markkinen, John Collins, and Naz Reid, and Gordon Hayward at this position. Maybe in the centers, Miles Turner is probably my favorite play at this position right now. He played really well yesterday against Cleveland, and I look for him to continue to try to play big minutes and play solid fantasy outputs. Obviously, getting close to double doubles definitely helps him do that. But the 3 games he's scored over 20 points, he's been extremely good. And in the 2 games he didn't really hit the fantasy points that we needed. That's kind of what he does. But this particular matchup bodes well for him, and he's been really solid against them in the past, so that gives him a lot of utility here. Rudy Gobert is in an interesting spot here against his former team. He had 2 really solid games last year against them, and he had one bad game. But this season he started off pretty solid, but his price has actually still come down some. He just needs 33 fantasy points to pay off, and I think he's more than capable of doing that in this particular matchup. He's nice and cheap over here, whereas on FanDuel he's a lot more expensive. And then kind of a Hail Mary play is Benazed. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. For Orlando, he could potentially start today, but he's high risk even if he does. That said, if you look at his past seasons, or past year, last year I found 8 games where he played over 20 fantasy. Or sorry, let me start that over. Last season, I found 8 games where he's played more than 20 minutes, and in 7 of those games, he 5x at this particular price point, which is a bit overpriced. He also had 1 game where he started and he scored 36 fantasy points, so he's definitely capable of a solid outing here. And if he does end up drawing the start, or if he's look like he's going to get 20 plus minutes, then he'd definitely be somebody I would consider on the slate, but he is high risk, high reward. You can also consider Domantas Sabonis, Zion, and Anthony Davis at this position. Moving into our FanDuel picks here, I'll just show you these here. So for FanDuel, Tyrese Halliburton and LaMelo Ball are my 2 top options at the point guard position. Granted, I do like Terry Rozier, though he is also a little bit more expensive than I had hoped him to be on FanDuel. That said, Peyton Pritchard is dirt cheap, and if he draws a start, he'll be probably a must play over here, especially with the price. Looking at shooting guards, Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown also have some utility at this position. Jaylen Brown seems a little bit underpriced on this site over against DraftKings, where he's more expensive. Malik Monk has some utility as with Fox being out, and then Gordon Hayward is a pretty solid price over here as well. Maybe we got small forwards. Bruce Brown has a pretty favorable price. LeBron's a little overpriced, but if you think the game's going to stay close, then he's going to be worth taking a look at. And then Harrison Barnes has some upside as his price is a little bit too cheap over here. Zion is also a little bit too cheap. He's a little bit cheaper than DraftKings, and he has a little bit more upside as a result. Ben Simmons has a lot of upside on FanDuel with the fact that he gets a lot of assists and rebounds, and hopefully he can get a double-double or so. Domantas Sabonis and Jabari Smith both have utility on the slate, and Sabonis definitely comes out as a very solid option. As center, Alperen Sengun has a lot of upside on FanDuel. Carroll Towns also has a lot of upside here, and they're both the same price. But if you want to go a little bit cheaper, you can look at Porzingis or Miles Turner. But honestly, all 4 of these guys look really solid on FanDuel today. A couple other sub 6,000 priced options. Buddy Hield for for Indiana. Kobe White for Chicago. Jalen Suggs for Orlando, especially if Fultz is ruled out, and Dylan Brooks for Houston. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.